What's good, YouTube? It's MERMAID back in another video. As you guys are watching this, there are a lot of pro players currently testing some cards for the new YCSs in 2024, including the 3v3 in Costa Rica, as well as the 3v3 in Las Vegas the week after that. And both of these events will have Phantom Nightmare legal, which includes a plethora of new cards that completely destroys the current metagame as we know it. Well, with a new metagame comes some new exciting cards. Guys, check this out. In this video, we're going to talk about the cards that people are currently playtesting. So I've seen a lot of players testing on Dueling Book as well as among some inner secret circles, and here's what I found. You guys are gonna love this, but starting off at the top, Cosmic Cyclone. There's no secret that this card is extremely versatile, especially when going second against certain decks like Fire King because of this one interaction. Yes, Fire King Island. This card says if this face-up card in the field zone is sent to the graveyard or banished, guess what? Mandatory trigger effect, destroy all monsters you control. Meaning if your opponent currently has a board full of monsters, including monsters like Appaloosa, which don't benefit at all from being destroyed, then a measly Cosmic Cyclone will take care of that entire board by popping the Fire King Island, or better yet, banishing it, I suppose, then getting rid of their monsters, forcing them to trigger their monsters in the graveyard like Garunix, and forcing everything to come back out, which also enables and turns on powerful high impact cards that you might be playing like Triple Tactics Rust or Triple Tactics Talent. And the nice thing about Cosmic Cyclone is that it's so freaking versatile in the other matchups as well. You know, if you're going first, you can also side it in because it's effective against Fire King Island when they try to search with it, or even using it against certain cards like Field Spells, Pearl Rhino, there's My Friend Purely, and even monsters that are treated as continuous spell cards thanks to cards like Flamberg. Sometimes the Pure Snake Eyes deck, which is actually a thing, they do scale the IP Masquerena and then try to special summon it out during your turn so they can go off directly into their IP Masquerena link plays with the Flamberg. So Cosmic Cyclone just deals with so much, and I see so many players are currently side decking this. This card is amazing. You guys should definitely include this in your side deck. I think it's an auto inclusion. Next card is a bit of a bizarre one, but I actually had the liberty of seeing certain players test this card, and it's called Made to Order Mermaid Outfit Outfitter. Yes, that's a mouthful. This was originally a TCG exclusive that was released somewhere down the line in the past year. People completely forgot about this card. It was a very memey card for like a 15 minutes after it was spoiled, and then people said this card doesn't do anything. Well, it actually does do something now. It says target a card in your opponent's graveyard, banish it, and you can add one card from your deck to your hand with the same name as a banished card. Now, the first thing that you have to notice about this card is you don't have to banish specifically a monster. You can also banish spells and traps. Well, this happens to be good against a graveyard-based meta. When you're playing against Fire Kings, there are a lot of cards in the graveyard that can be very annoying. First and foremost, Sacred Fire King Garunix. And if you happen to be playing a mirror match going second, what you can actually do is activate Made to Order Mermaid Outfitter, banish their Garunix so that does not come back, and then trigger it so you can add your own Garunix to your hand, which serves as an extender and basically a free +1 because you replaced that Mermaid card that was originally in your hand, which you expended to banish the Garunix. But it doesn't stop there. You can also hit other things. I mean, you can obviously hit the Prisoner Princess. Now, this does not trigger you adding a princess to your hand because it's an extra deck monster, but still, you basically made it so the Mermaid spell was a DD Crow. You got rid of the princess, which might have been a problem. Now, beyond that is where things get interesting because you can actually use it against spell or trap cards. So if they have something like a bonfire in the graveyard and we didn't open any starters, we can just go ahead and banish the bonfire, searching our own bonfire so we can start playing. We can also banish other cards that they might have in the graveyard for whatever reason, and then get a little lucky. You know, if they happen to have like an Ash Blossom in their graveyard at some point throughout the duel, we can definitely use it to search our own Ash Blossom so we have some follow-up, or just a fire monster in our hand. There's so many cool things you can do. You can search for Snake Eyes cards as well that are in their graveyard like Populous, and then immediately trigger the effect of Populous, so you don't have to burn your bonfire on the Populous. You can instead use that onto something else, like a Snake Eyes Ash. Let's say that the Ash gets impermed, or maybe your bonfire gets Ash Blossom. Then you can just, you know, play the Mermaid Outfitter, and then add your own copy of Populous. So there's just so many things that you can do with this. And best of all, it's a normal spell, so you can actually search it off of Triple Tactics Rust. So I think this is something that you guys can definitely test. How high impact of a card it is, I don't know. It's obviously a lot worse when you compare it one-to-one directly with cards like Soul Release, because this only banishes one card as opposed to 5. But then, you know, the niche scenarios where you're actually able to search other cards like Bonfire, search for Engine, it does create, you know, different angles for this card that could warrant playing. Maybe obviously the fact that you can search off of it with Trust is a big thing as well. Next is another card that people have been keeping on the down low, SHADDOLL Fusion. Yes, this card allows you to obviously fusion summon a SHADDOLL monster from your extra deck when you go second, while your opponent controls a monster special summoned from the extra deck. Well, there happens to be one SHADDOLL monster in particular that does a large amount of damage to the graveyard, and that card is called SHADDOLL Ariel, who says if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target up to 3 cards in the graveyard, banish them. Wow, this is literally like a Keldo or Medora that banishes. It's really, really nice. So if I'm going second and I'm staring down your board of something like an Ambler Whale, well, I can easily just activate SHADDOLL Fusion and then dump some SHADDOLL monsters from my deck to the graveyard to fusion something out. Now, the nice thing about this is also if they have something like an Appaloosa that's negating card effects, you can chain block the Appaloosa because it can only negate things on the last thing on the chain, right? So if I can summon something like a El Shaddol AppClone, I can just negate the Appaloosa directly by making AppClone Chainlink 1, let's say the SHADDOLL Chainlink 2, and then something like a SHADDOLL Dragon Chainlink 3, so they're forced to negate the Dragon with the Appaloosa. If they don't negate Dragon and you're playing Dragon in your build, you can just pop something for free. There are also cards like SHADDOLL Beast, depending on the type of deck that you're playing, so you can definitely benefit from a draw as well. These cards are obviously kind of bricky, so it really depends on how much you want to brick your deck. But then if you're playing like a fire-based deck and you only want to play Ariel just for that one banishing interaction, you could just summon something like a El Shaddol Grista, which is a fire SHADDOLL monster that happens to be level 7, if that's relevant, you know, for your synchro plays or for your XYZ plays. Now, unfortunately, SHADDOLL Fusion just has one intrinsic drawback, and that is the existence of Promethean Princess. So when this is in your opponent's graveyard and it's our turn and we activate SHADDOLL Fusion, well, because we're turn player, we have to trigger things as Chainlink 1, obviously, so our Ariel is going to have to go higher on the chain as Chainlink 1 or 2. And then our opponent gets to chain their trigger effects, meaning they can Chainlink 2 or Chainlink 3 or whatever, Promethean Princess, meaning they are going to be able to resurrect the princess before it gets banished off of Ariel. So Ariel really only gets some value banishing cards like the Garunix that might be in their graveyard, or any other cards that they might be able to try and resurrect off of the Ambler Whale, for example, like a Link 3 or a lower monster. You know, Ambler Whale gets to resurrect the Link 3 or lower monster when he's popped. So it does have some marginal value, and you also, if you think about it this way, you're forcing them to trigger the Promethean Princess on something that doesn't really hurt you, right? Like, they're getting rid of the SHADDOLL monster. Who cares? We don't really care. They're going to pop our SHADDOLL monster. We are going to be able to add back the SHADDOLL Fusion, which can be relevant. You know, this is a free card that we can discard off something like a Forbidden Droplet if that ever comes up, for example. There might be other cards that you might have to discard from your hand. There's some of the Nightmares as well. There's obviously Nightmare Unicorn and Nightmare Phoenix. So it's a free card that you get back, and they're forcing them to bait. We're baiting out their Promethean Princess, so they're forced to use it. So even though it doesn't banish it, there's still a lot of use here. You know, we're getting value by banishing the Garunix, whatever else in the graveyard, and then we're also forcing them to use the princess. So this is something that I think is actually potentially high impact. It can also be thrustable. It's searchable off thrust as a normal spell. So this is something I've seen some players test on the down low. I wasn't supposed to leak this, but guys, you know what? The people have to know, and now you guys know. So let me know what you guys think about SHADDOLL Fusion. Next is Lancea. This is the type of card that people are siding going first, because it's a huge counter side to some of the powerful cards that people are siding in going second. Namely, if they're playing a fire deck like Fire King, your opponent will be siding in cards like Soul Release, so you don't want them to banish your entire graveyard. This card is very, very powerful if left unchecked. Like Soul Release plus like a hand trap that whittles down our board, meaning our end board is not going to be that good. All of our stuff is going to be in the graveyard. That's very, very high impact. So guys, what does Lancea do? Well, it says neither player can banish cards. So that means if you chain it to Soul Release, well, Soul Release is going to fizzle. They're not going to be able to banish any of your cards, so you protect your graveyard. There are also some other cards that banish. If you guys remember, we just talked about one, Cosmic Cyclone on the Fire King Island. That hurts a lot. Well, if I chain Lancea to your Cosmic Cyclone, I get to keep my island. You're not banishing anything. There are also other cards that also banish in the format, you know, Pot of Prosperity. Like the Ritual deck, they also will be banishing the Voiceless Voice, I think they're called, or Silent Force, or whatever the heck they're going to localize it as. They do have a Silent Forcer Queen who allows them to banish itself from the graveyard to ritual summon from their hand without using a ritual spell. So Lancea kind of does double duty there. There are cards like DD Crow that they might draw for their 6th card and try to use against our Garunix or Promethean Princess in the graveyard. We can chain Lancea, prevent Crow from resolving, and of course, card that I really, really hate when it resolves against me, Evenly matched. This card is just such a huge blowout, so being able to stop the evenly matched, like, LANCEA just hits so many things in the format that it's just a decent option going first that your opponent can't really interact with beyond something like a Called by the Grave if they're chaining it to LANCEA, which, by the way, guys, we can actually chain it to Called by the Grave. And yeah, that's just a big blowout. If we have Ash Blossom and LANCEA and they go, yeah, I'll call by your Ash, well, guess what? You're not going to call by it because we have LANCEA. So this is a cool card going first. I think that has a lot of application. Guys, give it a go. Let me know what you think. Next is another card. Yes, you guys saw this in the thumbnail. I was not kidding around. Monster Reborn. I actually think this card is somewhat decent. This is a powerful extender. This feels like the format of extenders because a lot of people will be playing hand traps. Mark my words, guys. Hand traps are the only way that you are going to be interacting with your opponent in this upcoming format because board breakers will not be enough. They will have a lot of cards in their hand, a lot of cards in the graveyard, a lot of cards on their field, and board breakers will not win you the game. And from my personal testing, I think hand traps are required, at least in tandem with board breakers. If you haven't played board breakers, you're going to have to play hand traps. And Monster Reborn is a type of card that's insane in a hand trap meta because you're able to reborn your extenders. But let's say we summon something like a Snake Eye Ash and our opponent happens to Veiler or Imperm the Snake Eye Ash. Well, we can easily just link this bad boy off into a Link Rebo, play Monster Reborn, resurrect that same Snake Eye's Ash, and Snake Eye's Ash is no longer negated, so we can use the second effect to actually tribute itself plus another card we control to special summon out a Flamberg, and then from there we're just going super plus because we can resurrect 2 level 2s, just continue playing. And better yet, going second, this card has a lot of application because you can resurrect an enemy Garunix, trigger its effect because it's special summoned. You can also resurrect an enemy Promethean Princess, meaning it can't pop anything. And best of all, being able to resurrect Link monsters means we can easily Link climb. Like, just with this card, you know, we're just Link climbing. We can resurrect a Link 3, Link 2, just go ham with our Link climbing. And the shenanigans you can pull off of Monster Reborn are especially insane because a lot of the cards in the Snake Eye archetype get the effect when they're summoned, period, not just normal or special summon. So cards like Snake Eyes Populous, you get the effect. Cards like Snake Eyes Ash, you also get the effect. I don't know why Konami made them this broken, but okay, I'm gonna abuse Monster Reborn if it comes down to it, you know, like, yeah, why not? Snake Eye Oak even, you can resurrect this, resurrect another monster, and just start playing. It just does a lot, I think, as a card that can also be searched off of Thrust. You guys see a common trend here. I don't know if Thrust is going to be that good, but these are cards that you can search off of Thrust, so there are just so many options. The toolbox is endless, and Monster Reborn is a card that I've always adored. I just been testing this card. I like it a lot. Guys, let me know what you think about Monster Reborn. Moving on to the next card is Secret Village of the Spellcasters. You guys remember this toxic card. It always gets forgotten about, but then it comes back to rear its ugly, toxic face right in the middle of the field, and you literally stare at your hand and it's super green and you're like, yeah, I can't activate anything, it's game. Well, there are a bunch of spellcasters that you guys should be familiar with, namely the Bellstar of the Black Witch. This is a spellcaster monster. Yes, if they have the Bellstar on the field with the Secret Village of the Spellcasters, you're not going to be doing a lot. And somebody actually mentioned in my Squidio over last video talking about Earthbound monsters, there's actually the new Earthbound fusion that can search for the Secret Village of the Spellcasters. So that might be relevant in certain decks. They just activate it and then you're kind of in a pickle. But I mean, the fact that this card interacts with Diabellstar the Black Witch being a spellcaster is just insane. There are cards like Selene, which is also a spellcaster, allowing you to resurrect one of your spellcasters like Effect Veiler and just keep that on the board so your opponent can't really do anything. There's so many different spellcasters in the game. There's Dark. I mean, even Hida is a spellcaster. Guys, there's so many easily accessible spellcasters that if somebody decides in Secret Village and activates it, you better have an out. Like, you better have an out above Cosmic Cyclone. There might be something like Pankratops that can easily deal with it, but if somebody is saying, hey, Appaloosa's in the format, I don't want to side Dialorus or Pankratops and kind of get blown out, I'm going to side Cosmic Cyclones, that's where Secret Village is really going to be a powerful meta call, and it's going to counter a lot of side decks and take them off guard. And then, of course, there are other cards like Relinquished Anima. You know, you can easily make this with any level 1. Everyone could play it in their level 1 Snake Eyes decks. And yeah, it just snowballs. And I really want to see this card banned eventually because it's just not fun to play. So yeah, guys, watch out for Secret Village. Last but not least, it's not really a card that a lot of people have been experimenting with, but I literally dug this out of my bulk and I said, wait a minute. This could potentially be relevant. MEKLORD Emperor WISEL. This is a card that says it must be special summoned When a face-up monster you control is destroyed by a card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand. And then the other effect says that once per turn, you can target a synchro monster your opponent controls, equip that target to this card. But the effect that we care about is the trigger effect that says once per turn, when your opponent activates a spell card, quick effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. So in a deck like Fire King, where we're destroying our monsters, we can easily summon out a WISEL, potentially protecting against opposing spell cards like Soul Release, which are very high impact, and just stop them from playing. Hopefully this card is really easily to summon out in the right deck, just popping your monsters. And going second, I realized if they have a Promethean Princess in the graveyard, we can actually summon out WISEL when our monster is popped. Now, one thing to note is that this is an older card that has the missing the timing tag. This says when a face-up monster you control is destroyed by a card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon this. So the destruction has to be the last thing on the chain. It's not an if. Yeah, back in the day, we had something called missing the timing. So technically, if our opponent is doing something to destroy our monster on a chain link 2 or higher, then we will not be able to summon out the WISEL. We can only do it when it's something chain link 1, and we can only do it when destruction is the last thing to happen. And because I specifically read the text for Promethean Princess, it says when your opponent special summons a monster, you can target one fire monster you control and one monster your opponent controls, destroy them, and if you do, special summon this card. So this happens all at the same time. If it said then special summon this card, then you would not be able to activate the WISEL, but because it says if you do, it's the same timing. So yes, the WISEL will actually be able to trigger itself. And then the same thing with Fire King Island. This card says during your main phase, you can destroy a monster in your hand or field, and if you do, add a Fire King monster. So it happens at the same time. If it said then WISEL would not be able to be special summoned. But these cards are actually forgiving for once, so WISEL will not miss the timing in that aspect. This could be somewhat relevant with the synchro absorbing effect as well against, pure Snake Eyes. If they have some kind of synchro monster on the board that already burned its negate, like a Baron de Fleur, I can just suck it up and use it as my own, right? So just like funny things that you can do with this card. Whether it's good or not, I don't know. There's no real way to search this card unless you guys can find some way to search the level 1 machine. Let me know in the comments. But I just saw this card and I was like, this is funny. This might be good. This part of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just testing quirky cards and seeing if they have niche interactions where they're really good and catch people off by surprise, right? So yeah, this is what I thought about the card. Guys, let me know in the comments. What do you think? Are there any cards that we're missing that people are actually secretly testing in the background that we need to know about? Because the world needs to know. If I'm going to a Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament, I better know what people are playing, because I do not want to be caught off guard and read a card like 5 times over and over and then eventually lose the duel. Guys, thanks a lot for tuning in this video. Let us know your thoughts below if there are any cards that are good, and we'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.